Okay, it comes up quite frequently that I tend to be pro Mac. I don't know why, but I get comments and have people talking about Mac and well PCs are better than Macs. Look, I'm not going to get into that argument. I'm just going to say that I feel that you select the software that you want to use first, and then you purchase the computer and operating system that it's going to run on. And for video editing and all that sort of thing, I love iMovie. I think it's friendly, it's easy to use, it does exactly what I need. I'm not going to produce the next 3-hour epic movie. I just like to do this, and it does a great job. There were certain Apple applications, and I love Keynote and that sort of thing, that drove me to purchase a Macintosh because the Mac runs the software that I want to. In the world of business, for the most part, about 95% of business applications run on Windows. It's just the way it is. So the question is, could Steve Jobs save Microsoft? This is kind of interesting. Now, this was written it was the New Zealand Herald by a Mark Webster. And the article goes on to say the company was in disarray, competitors had beaten its percentage of the market down, and the trend looks set to continue. The product line was exasperatingly diverse. As such, it was hard to differentiate one model from another, and rival platforms were starting to look attractive, cheap, and cohesive by comparison. It was hemorrhaging money, according to CNN Money, and struggling to fight for its flagship brand. That was Apple Computer in the 1900s, when in the mid-1990s rather, when Steve Jobs came back, and one of the first things done was run a razor over the product lines and to make them easy to differentiate and easy to choose between. Of course, the radical design of the all-in-one new iMac helped turn heads, and wallets too. And then iPod defined a whole new market sector and turned the real strength of the company. When you consider that an Apple Mac can run Windows, which it can, actually my 24-inch iMac runs Vista fairly nicely for the most part, as well as to be expected. At any rate, when you consider the fact that they're running Windows on this thing, pundits increasingly rate Apple, now called Apple Inc., as a computer maker up against Dell, HP, and so forth, rather than as a direct competitor to the operating system maker Microsoft. So there you have it, kind of the crux of the story. Now, though, Microsoft is looking increasingly like Apple did in the 90s. Which version of Vista would you like? Have fun choosing. Hewlett Packard's become so tired of complaints about Vista on its computers. Business Week says the used computer giant is exploring the possibility of building its own mass market operating system, according to Business Week resources. HP is basing the simpler OS on Linux, as Apple Mac OS is built on Unix. And the article goes on to say the goal is to make HP less dependent on Windows and to strengthen their hand against Apple, which has gained market share in recent years. Indeed. Another factor might be security. Despite the half-decade struggle, Microsoft to protect Windows against malicious software is spreading faster than ever. So there's been a 43% jump in malware removed from Windows computers just in the last half year. In the tech world, in the tech world, you can either pilot the market, or steer the market by introducing new device categories, or do a better job with existing ones, right? So what is Microsoft thinking when it introduced the Zune up against the iPod? There's no doubt that Microsoft's had some real big misses. Now, I'm here to tell you they did some things right. But we'll talk about that here in a minute. So, could Steve Jobs actually turn things around at Microsoft? This kind of article is kind of a strange one, okay, in my opinion. Microsoft does what it does very, very well, which is server operating systems, client operating system, Office applications group. Most of their money is made selling business computers to businesses, Office productivity tools, and server applications. Steve Jobs clearly is a brilliant man who has turned around Apple Computer and makes some fantastic products. but they're very much in, for the most part, in that consumer space. The iPod, the iMac, that this stuff is really not. I mean, do they have a server? Yes, they have OS 10 Leopard server. They do have the Xserve, and they do have some other products, but they're not as aggressive about pushing that technology as they are, iPods and now the iPhones and all that. I mean, they're very much, I think, committed more to the consumer space than the enterprise space. And Microsoft doesn't make its money, or nearly as much money, on consumer products as it does on enterprise software and office applications and that sort of thing. Would Steve Jobs be happy about that? I don't think so. It's not his thing. He likes, design. He's a hardware guy. I mean, it's not that he's not a software guy, but he really puts a lot of emphasis on things like industrial design and that sort of thing. And that's really not where Microsoft is. They're a software house. Yes, they do have some hardware. The Xbox 360, the Zune. They make some wonderful keyboards and mice and webcams and that sort of thing. But for the most part, they're predominantly a software house. So I don't think Steve Jobs would be. There's nothing for him to turn around over there. I think it's just apples to oranges. I think Microsoft is very dissimilar in a lot of ways than Apple. Not that Microsoft isn't big in the home PC market, because it certainly is, but they make the bulk of their money really on the serving business and enterprise and all that stuff. If you don't believe it, go out and price a 10-user license of Exchange Server with Exchange and all the other stuff, and Windows Server and all the other components. Believe me, your $200 copy of Windows pales in comparison to some of the prices that Microsoft gets for some of this stuff. So, kind of an interesting article. I don't know. I don't think Microsoft really needs save so much. I think they're also, being realistic, and they're trying to deal with the onslaught of software as a service. So that's going to be an interesting thing to shake out.